All right. And we are live. My lighting looks weird. Something's going on with my lighting right now. It's very dark. Sorry, adjusting all my lightings. Still too many shadows. I don't know what's going on. Something changed. I can't tell what, though. Can't put my finger on it, but I feel like the lighting is different. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody in. This is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter live stream today, just because we don't have as much to talk about, but there's enough to talk about, and things are happening so fast that I feel like it's important that we do a little bit more live streams that are a little bit closer together so that information is relayed a little bit better. I'm sorry. I'm setting up my setup here. I have been running around all day, everybody, so I really appreciate all of the patience you have with me. I'm going to retweet my live stream and we will get into it. Let's see. Ralph says, Scott, find a job yet? And I don't need to find a job, but thank you for being concerned about that. He will probably have to do these more often now that the USAID money has dried up. Yeah, you know all that USAID money I was getting for talking bad about the US and their foreign policy, for sure, bro. This is the job. A little late stream W for sure. And then San Antonio. Remember, if you guys are in here, I always want to know where you guys are from, so go ahead and throw that up. And let me go ahead and retweet my live stream real fast, and then we'll get into it. Okay. Hopefully everybody is doing good. We are just going to go over the updates real quick here. My dog is now in here. He's chilling. He's big chilling, so that's going on. Oh, let's see. All right. So starting with the biggest probably news for all of you, I would say. I imagine you guys probably care about this more than most. Here in the Sumy region, we have an advance by the Russian forces. And in fact, there are claims now that this advance in the Kursk region has broken into the Sumy region. This is, again, we have a small advance here outside of Severodolikovo. I can never pronounce that town's name, but in the direction of Lebedivka. And again, along this Zdruzda highway here that leads into Zdruzda itself. And with this potential, and I want to make this very clear, this is a potential advance. Some sources are saying it's happened. I haven't seen any geos for it yet, so I'm waiting. But as you can clearly see, the claimed advance is along this small river right here, the Lokyana River, down this road from Novenki to Besivka. So again, this is just another example of why this Kursk pocket was just such a bad idea for the Ukrainians, especially now, is because if the Russians are able to break through here and cut road access, this becomes a massive salient, and then the Ukrainian garrison in Struzda is in fact stuck and cut off from supply. So this is the situation's getting much worse. It doesn't look like anything is remedying it, and we will see how this develops. But yeah, this would be detrimental to the future of the Ukrainian Kursk incursion zone. Stop that. That's distracting. He's licking his paw. It's very distracting to me. Okay. Just a small advance here into the village of Zeleny High. Really nothing substantial. There was not a ton of updates from Tuesday to today. So I'm just going over the updates we do have. More of the conversation I want to talk about is the geopolitical side of things and what's been said recently. So a small Russian advance here in the direction of Tarasivka, just south of Vadyane Druhe. Again, just really expanding out this zone of control around the ring road and onto the highway, really beginning to develop the northern Pokrovsk pincer. The encirclement in Constantinople is still ongoing. We did not get any news from here today. Deep State has been posting their up maps at like 3 a.m. my time, so like 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is like 12 in Ukraine, but for the day before. So they're very late on their updates, but I'm expecting that Deep State is going to give us an update on this area this evening or tomorrow morning. All right, just north of Velika Novoselka, Russian forces have captured the entirety of the village of Novo-Ochretuvatayev and have advanced. Just the front line has advanced across this entire area from Velika Novoselka to Novoselka and into getting very close to just basically compromising this entire next defensive line right here. And there's nothing behind it. So these movements, while small, are very important to the overall tactical situation. All right, and the last update is here. I'm not even going to try that one. Right outside of Orikhiv, along the road to Orikhiv, Russian forces have just made a small advance. So again, not a ton of major advances in the past 48 hours that have been reported, but some small ones there for you guys. All right, let's see. How is everybody doing? I hope everybody is doing good. I saw some questions. Remember, guys, this is going to be kind of a different stream. This is much more laid back. So if you guys want to like get questions in at any time, feel more than free. I will answer. I'll be looking at chat a lot more. So we had some pretty major statements made by Trump towards Ukraine. This is a developing situation, but as you can tell by the title of today's live stream, what I believe we're looking at is really the inevitable American shift away from Ukraine. You know, I've been talking about this for weeks now. I mean, months, years, that eventually the U.S. would give up on Ukraine because we're not. It's not a geostrategic necessity for us, right? It is not an existential threat like it is to Russia. We do not have to maintain our presence in Europe, or in Ukraine rather, the way that we are in terms of, you know, military aid and financial support and intelligence and everything else that goes along with that. We were naturally going to move away. I think that the Biden administration wanted to move away, and not that they could, and not that that was an option for them, but I think if they had the option to move away from Ukraine, distance themselves, and transition, they would have done it already. I always say this, guys, U.S. foreign policy does not change. There are basic fundamental things about U.S. foreign policy that must be maintained to maintain U.S. dominance and our sphere of influence and everything like that. And that inability to change foreign policy, you know, if depending on the president and whatnot, is not necessarily because of the president, but rather because of the natural ebb and flow of geopolitics. I guess it's kind of complicated, but the U.S. has always wanted to pivot to China, right? Biden was talking about it. The Biden administration was talking about it. This is not a Trump idea. This is not a Republican idea. This is a U.S. Geostrategic interest idea. Like no matter who was reelected or if Trump got elected or whatever, the fundamental direction that the U.S. is going is not going to change. Now, how they might go about that is going to change. what that looks like for, Ukraine's future, for the future of the Middle East. Those things might change slightly depending on who's in the office, but the overall direction doesn't change. So Trump is just doing what Biden, I think, wishes he probably could have done, which is remove the liability of the U.S. For Ukraine. Ukraine as a proxy has expired. Its time has expired. It is not going to survive very long without the U.S.'s support. And with the U.S. withdrawing support, it puts an immense amount of pressure on the Ukrainian regime to negotiate or just basically agree to whatever settlement is decided between the United States and Russia. Now, will this happen? I am not holding my breath, guys. I think that there are a lot of people in the pro-Russian space, in the pro-Chinese space, that seem to just kind of be eating all of this up again. Um, it seems to me like there has been some sort of memory holing of Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 and all of these other deals in the last 3 years seem to just be kind of vanishing because people think Trump is this light at the end of the tunnel and he's going to change things around, and he very well might. I could be very wrong, and I made a tweet about this, and I kind of want to read it just because of how well I feel like it explains the situation. But basically, my idea about what is happening right now is that Trump is showing great flexibility in this moment. And I think this is something that the U.S. often does. They have this ability to change their image, change their the way that people perceive them, foreign actors perceive them, and they have an ability to negotiate and make deals that are not necessarily in the best interest of the people that they're making them with, but rather in the best interest of the U.S. in the short term, because the U.S. does not have necessarily the long-term commitment ideas that go along with said deals. So they'll make a deal to achieve a short-term goal and then not follow through upon that deal as soon as that deal no longer suits their interests, right? And this is what I think is probably going to come out of Ukraine. I have a feeling that Trump is going to offer Trump is going to dangle multiple carrots in front of Putin's face, and there's going to be a couple of end goals in doing so. So the first one that I think is a huge red flag, and I think is very concerning, is this talk of removing U.S. troops from Europe. I think that this is a great idea for the U.S. I don't think U.S. troops need to be in Europe. I don't think U.S. troops in Europe even make any sense, really, because if the Russians ever wanted to invade Europe, which they don't, so already primary reason why you don't need troops in Europe. But if they were to, you just have a nuclear deterrent, right? So even if you had troops there and they were attacked by the Russians, you're still going to use nukes. It doesn't make any sense. You don't have to have troops there. Unless you're planning on fighting a conventional war, which I don't believe the U.S. is, and the prospect of U.S. withdrawing from NATO and not withdrawing from NATO the organization, but withdrawing from European NATO countries, pulling missiles back, whatever, coming to agreements on intermediate range ballistic missiles and stuff like this. These are all carrots that can be very carefully dangled in front of Putin and his negotiating team's face. Again, false promises that will not be adhered to later. And just with the immediate short-term goal of achieving a ceasefire. Ukraine is currently in a position where they do not have the momentum or energy to continue this fight. They absolutely need a pause. The West needs a pause if they want to continue supporting Ukraine. And Europe needs a couple of years to bring their defense industry online. And this is sort of the bottleneck of this idea, I guess. I know that there's going to be a lot of people saying that perhaps Europe won't have the economic stability or the political stability to, increase their weapons manufacturing, shell production, stuff like that, to continue the fighting in Ukraine. But what I want you guys to think about is, if part of the peace negotiations are European troops being put in as a peace contingent after a ceasefire is agreed upon, right? So this is not NATO troops coming into conflict with Russian troops. These are NATO peacekeepers being sent in. European, they won't be under a NATO flag. They'll be under an individual European nation flag. These troops will act as a tripwire that will buy the Ukrainians time to rearm, reestablish themselves, and just prepare for a potential next fight if there ever was to be one. Not saying that this is necessarily Trump's plan, but the issue I have with ever seeing why Russia or Putin would agree to this is because in 4 years, you don't know who's going to be in that position of power, right? Trump might be very earnest in what he's doing, but the people that come after him might be as disingenuous as the previous administration. And you just don't know, and you don't know how things can switch up like that. So I'm watching the negotiations very tightly. I'm seeing what's being said, but so far what it looks like to me is the US is decoupling itself from the Ukraine project, which should have happened a while ago. It's obviously not succeeding in the way that it needs to, and you're just hemorrhaging at this point. So cut your losses, move on to China, but you don't want to lose Europe, right? You don't want to lose Ukraine to Russia and have Russia become this gigantic geostrategic, or have this giant sphere of influence into Europe. You don't want that as the United States, and you definitely don't want that as Europe. The European leadership does not want that. So I definitely think that what we are going to see, and we're already seeing them talk about this is not something that I'm making up. European defense spending is going to go through the roof. You're probably going to see a major crackdown on the political opposition in the countries, in the European countries, like the AfD in Germany and stuff like that. You're going to see massive censorship, very probably questionable elections over the next couple of months. And, people talk about the decay of the European economies and stuff like that. Yeah, that's all well and good, but until they actually collapse, they can still continue to print money and continue to do all the things that will continue driving them towards the end, but will be at least momentarily sustainable in potentially, getting Ukraine back on its feet, and just slowing down the Russian machine and giving themselves some time. I'm very, very concerned that this conflict will be happening again in a couple of years. Just because I don't think that the bad blood is going anywhere. I don't think that the peace can be maintained. And I don't think that the European partners will want that, uneasy peace. They don't want to keep funding Ukraine. And there's a lot of moving parts here, but I think that the US is setting this up very perfect. And Keith, the US Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, or whatever his name is, hold on just a second. He basically used the term division of labor, and this is a great term that they're saying it. All you have to do again is just listen to what the decision makers are saying. They want Europe to take over the Ukraine project, and the best way to achieve that is by the US dropping it, because then there's not the US-Russian conflict. So I don't really think this is, Pete Hegseth. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I don't think that this is what it looks like. I don't think that this is going to play out the way a lot of people think. And I would be very, very careful about getting extremely excited and happy, especially if you're like more of a pro-Russian individual, leaning individual. I would be very, very careful about getting super excited and thinking that the war is over and that Ukraine is lost and that the US is in a full retreat, because I don't think that that's what's happening at all. All right, guys, that's my little spiel. Thank you so much for listening. We have a question here. Now that the war is winding up, what will we do to fill the time? Are there any other wars worth watching? Well, I'm sure that there's going to be something going on in West Bank and Gaza here soon. I'm sure that there's going to be something in Iran. And I would not hold my breath to see that the Ukraine war will end. Honestly, I don't know if Ukraine is going to accept it. I don't know if NATO is going to accept it. And if they do, I don't know if the Russians are going to accept the conditions upon which the West is willing to accept a ceasefire. So we'll see. Let's see. Love you, Tyrone Coles. I love you too, homie. Hello, greetings from Chile. Welcome in, man. Sorry, I'm just going back up through some of the comments here. Did Deep State just post? Oh, yeah, they did. Let's see. Oh, I was right, though. They did. What the? I feel like. Okay, I'll show you guys the Deep State update. I feel like they're just like, I don't know. I feel like he's had this filled in. Let's see. So this is the area that's saying that they're showing the only single advance, I think, across the whole map. Yeah. Yeah, a nothing advance, but let's see. What was it before? Was it gray zone? Oh, so all this gray zone just turned. Yeah, that's nothing. That's lame. All right. All right. Cool. At least we know. All right. I saw a question in here that I wanted to answer. What's your favorite non-geopolitical YouTube channels to watch? There's this game, it's called Company of Heroes, and there's this guy Tightrope, and I like to watch him. So that's like a gaming one. And then like Outdoor Boys, like I like camping YouTube videos. Let me think. What else do I watch? I don't know. Trying to think about what I watch on YouTube. Let's see. What do I watch on YouTube? Nothing worth talking about, I guess, obviously. Let's see. Have you read Kishore Mohammadi's op-ed in the Europe and Foreign Policy magazine? What do you think? I have not. I would appreciate you if you sent that to me on Telegram or Twitter. You can find those links in the description of this video. And if you guys are new here, please consider liking and subscribing. Let's see. If the Pentagon disconnects Ukrainian information systems from American launch detection data, they're done. Add that to Musk is considering cutting off access to Starlink to the Ukrainian military. Yeah, we'll see. Honestly, I have a feeling that if the war continues, intelligence will still find its way to the Ukrainians. So we will see. Time will tell. It'll be really interesting to see how earnest Trump is being and how the U.S. is actually going to go about things here in the coming weeks. The lack of change is addressed by Brian Berletic on the New Atlas channel. Yes, me and Brian talk frequently, and we share a lot of the same ideas when it comes to this stuff. So, yeah, go check out Brian Berletic's new YouTube channel. He does great work. Hegseth said he wanted to cut defense spending 5%, pulling everyone out of Europe might achieve that. Yeah, and again, it's a no loss. I mean, why do we have troops in Europe to begin with? Like, it doesn't do anything. It literally does not do anything except like bolster the idea of NATO, I guess, but it doesn't do anything. So, yeah, it would be a very easy way. And again, they're not really doing anything. Do you see how they're not making concessions? That's the thing is you're watching this and it does not look like the U.S. is making concessions. It looks like the U.S. is doing things that they want to do and dressing them up like concessions for the Russians. Russia is the dominant position. Yes, but here's the thing, and I can keep plugging away until a permanent security agreement is reached. Yeah, here's the thing: is that they can reach a permanent agreement, and then it can just change. The context can just change, and then you're fighting a different war, right? It's you have an agreement with these guys, and then these guys go back on what they said. It happens all the time. Lavrov already said no peacekeepers. What else you got? Well, you say that, and that's great and all, but if there's no NATO membership for Ukraine promised, and there's no EU membership or whatever, I could easily see the West allowing, or not allowing, but just it happening, Western peacekeepers entering the country. So we'll see. Time will tell, guys. Europe has no troops. They have some, not a lot, not enough for a war, but enough for a peacekeeping contingent that all it needs to do is be in a place so that if they get killed, a war starts, basically. That's what a tripwire force is. Remember, if you guys have questions, go ahead and get some questions in. Do NAFO have to draw their own dogs to join, or do they draw one for you when you join? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if anybody's drawing those dogs anymore. So Trump also leaked something big that there's going to be a joint venture with Russia. I suspect there's going to be an acceleration on joining with Russia on projects. Yeah, I mean, this could be. I just would be very cautious, guys. The U.S. might be attempting to pull Russia away from China right now, but there's one thing that nobody disagrees on is what's next for the U.S., right? And what's next is China. Russia and China are allies. The U.S. has proved over the past 3 years that it's not going to, whatever you want to say about Trump, you can like him, you cannot like him. I don't think that a single individual is going to make that much difference. And I don't think that the permanent establishment around him is going to allow just a complete fumbling of the U.S. Hegemonic position. Late night with Scott. Okay. Do you think we will see another lightning offensive by the Russians where they take tens of kilometers in a week or so in one direction? Yes, absolutely. I think if the war continues, you're going to see that very, very soon, actually. I think the whole front is basically primed for that right now. I don't think it's necessarily going to be some massive big arrow offensive. I think the Ukrainian lines are simply just going to break with the continued Russian pressure, and then the Russians are going to be able to push into a region. I don't think it's going to be like a 2023 counteroffensive or anything like that, where it's like staged and all set up, and then they go. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Taiwan? Do you think China will take it by force in the next 4 years? I think they will if the U.S. Makes it an issue, and I think the U.S. is probably going to make it an issue. So I don't know if it's in the next 4 years. I think that the U.S. is on an accelerated timeline because Russia is advancing much quicker than I think a lot of people expected them to. So, yeah, I think that the South China Sea, probably more than Taiwan, is going to get very hot here in the coming years. This is probably Russia's last shot to stop Ukraine from eventually escalating to obtaining nuclear weapons. Yeah, I don't think the West is going to allow them. The West really does not like the idea of nuclear proliferation. So, I mean, they can try, but I think that both sides would be very unhappy with that and would stop it before it actually happened. It also takes a lot of energy and industry to enrich uranium and to a weapons grade. And I mean, they have enriched uranium, obviously, and they can make it some sort of dirty bomb or something. But a true nuclear weapon that can be delivered, that takes a good amount of time. So, I mean, unless somebody gives it to them. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying usually you get some intel. There's some whispers that that stuff is going on, and I'm pretty sure the Russians would react horribly to that. So, Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov says terrorist groups around the world are being fueled by the weapons supply flowing from Ukraine. Yeah, I mean, that's been their talking point for a long time. I haven't particularly seen it. I would be very interested to see it. I mean, the thing is I don't know. I can't tell one RPG from another RPG, so I don't know if they got it from Ukraine. Also, all of the equipment in Ukraine comes from countries from all over the world, so I don't know if those countries, if that stuff got on the black market from Ukraine or from another country. It's very hard to tell, but I would not doubt that the stuff is being sold. Hey, Scott, what does self-enforcing treaty look like for the Russians? What's to keep the war against the Russians in Ukraine and beyond from continuing after the Trump presidency? Well, this is exactly it, right? I think that the first and foremost, the most necessary thing is regime change in Ukraine to a more Russian-friendly government, not a fully Russian-friendly government, but a slightly less a more pragmatic government that will then eventually probably be corrupted by the Russian sphere of influence. That would be that would solve their issues, I think, because if they can have control over the country through its politics, then it would be a different story. And I think that this is a very real possibility with Ukraine feeling very abandoned by the West. Now, not Western Ukraine, not the crazy Banderites and all those. They'll hate Russians until the day they die, but most Ukrainians are not that. So, question. From my understanding, you became interested in the whole Russia-Ukraine topic way back in 2013, actually, yes, when you were still 18. What sparked your interest in the subject? I was just super into... I was just trying to learn everything I could, and this was just like... There was like, if you go into like BBC... let's see if I can find it real fast. I used to be just so interested in what was going on around the news or around the world. So I would go, let's see. Do they have the sections? Earth? No. Travel? No. They used to have on BBC, they might still have it on the mobile version. I remember because I always used to check my phone when I was in class, but I would go on BBC and I just thought it was cool to read news. And I started to read, they were covering the Maidan protests. So I started following that back in 2013 and I was following that very closely. And then I watched the whole Odessa thing. Like I watched it happen, like basically like almost live. And that was jarring for me. I was like 15 and I just watched all these people burn alive. It was pretty crazy. And then everything started going down in the east of the country. The Su-25s like dive bombing people in Donetsk and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'll follow this. And then, as the war broke out, I decided to talk about it. If the U.S. was to pull its troops out of Europe, do you think that could lead to another war in the Bosnia or Kosovo? No, I don't think that there's a huge appetite for a war there right now. Potentially, maybe, but I think a lot of that tension came from the Biden administration. I don't think with Trump you're going to see that same tension with Serbia and Kosovo. I mean, the regular tension that's always going to be there, but the heightened like conflict with like the license plates and everything, I don't think that that's going to continue. Are Ukrainian using drugs, medication to help their soldiers fall in line? Like, how do you motivate someone kidnapped off the streets? Well, I know that they definitely give them some sort of amphetamines for battles and stuff. I mean, that's common. But no, I'm pretty sure they just beat them and threaten them with prison or death. And that's why they do it. You have an option. You can take a chance with a Russian FPV drone, or you could have your Ukrainian commander just dome you, right? So, Calibrated. Someone told me Russia wants to invade Europe because a lot of RU state TV talk. The Kremlin wants them to say that to get the population okay with the idea. No, I just don't listen. Just don't watch Russian state television. It's not good. Like, don't watch it. And don't watch other state televisions that are also not good and the information is not good. Like, I rarely use the Russian MOD as a source. I rarely use TASS. I mean, unless it's like something official, I don't really use TASS or RT or, I just don't use those because I don't think that they're particularly the best. Talking about elections, even if they force them, is there anyone who would openly challenging him now? No, not right now because he's in full control, and I'm sure he's in full control of the intel community. But with the sharp drop off of U.S. support and the conflict now between Zelensky and like Trump, I think that there would be somebody who would step up and at least challenge him. Can't we all just get along? Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Seen Berletic lately. Closer peace is matter. Closer peace is matter. He is. Closer peace is the matter. He is. No, he has watched for years and years how this has all been playing out. I mean, Minsk 1, Minsk 2. I've talked about this ad nauseum here, but he lives in an area that is now becoming the new Ukraine, right? He lives in Thailand, and the South Pacific region is going to be used in the exact same way that Ukraine was used, and he can see it with the NGOs, the money being funneled in, the way people are talking in the country. It's the same delusion. So he's not mad about peace. I think he would like the same thing that I would like, which is a lasting peace, right? An actual peace. The way we have both conferred on this and the points we agree on, at least, is that dealing with the US is never the path to actual peace. It's just a path to furthering US interests in some way or another. I think that's the point. Any update on the donkeys on the front line? They're everywhere, dude. It's the primary source of supply, logistics in Ukraine is donkey now for the Russians. How could the U.S. beat China without an apocalyptic nuclear war? Economic suppression. Probably proxy war, just like the same way that they thought that they could beat Russia, like the same ideas. Question: do you really believe Elon Musk is going to shut down Starlink for Ukraine? I don't know. I think so. I mean, I don't know why they would. If the U.S. is really pulling out the way that they're talking about, then why would Starlink stay? I mean, Elon is already talking very poorly about Zelensky. To be honest, I think the only reason Starlink went to Ukraine in the first place is because of the massive amount of pressure that the Biden administration was putting on Elon at the time. Got to remember that happened like 3 years ago. You talk about the operational space behind Pokrovsk. Why will the Russians be able to exploit it if they have a tough time in Kursk? Are they having a tough time in Kursk? I don't know what you're referring to. All I've seen out of Kursk is hundreds of fiber optic FPV strikes and an accelerated Ukrainian armor and personnel loss in that region. If I was the Russians, I would never want that to close. You are just allowed the Ukrainians to stick their arm into a wood chipper, and now it's just in there and nobody's applying a tourniquet. So that's what Kursk is. It makes no sense to shut it, especially if you're trying to attrit your enemy. As for the operational space behind Pokrovsk, it's just there's nothing back there for the Ukrainians to use as defense, and that's how the Ukrainians have been holding their lines, is with FPV drones and defensive structures. So once those defensive structures aren't there, the flat openness, the lack of urban settlements, that will allow the Russians to exploit it. Now, will the Russians end up exploiting it? I don't know. They've been moving slow and steady this entire time, so only time will tell. Let's see. I heard Trump wants to make guys. Bloody hell, Scott has no clue what he's talking about. Maybe too much weed in his side of his brain. Oh, wow, look, somebody disagrees with my opinion. Hey, you know what you should do? Hey, make a argument instead of just saying I have no idea what I'm talking about. See, anybody can say you have no idea what you're talking about. But if you don't actually articulate why I don't have any idea what I'm talking about, nobody's going to believe you. So try again. Scott, why do you think we haven't seen the Garen drones used on the front line? They have much bigger warheads and are supposedly super cheap. Because the front line, I mean, there's not usually static targets on the front line for these drones to be used on. These drones are much better for scouting primarily. So sending these things in and finding out where air defenses are, finding out where there's weak points in Ukrainian air defense, in the air defense network. They're really good for like mapping. Like you just send them out and then they fly in these random patterns and you can detect responses to your drones flying around. So I think that the reason why you don't see them is because of the actual efficiency of using these things on the front line. It's not there. And the primary purpose of these things is to basically just hit static targets. I mean, they're deep strike drones, right? So you could use them on the front line. I just don't think they're going to be as effective. Scott, good points about nuclear weapons development. Thank you. I'm trying to remember what I even said. I talk so much. Won't get a treaty too hard. UN resolution easier. Yeah. True. Wait, you already asked that question. Hi, Scott, watching from Shenzhen, China. Nice. Hard to catch you live because of the time change. I understand, man. I appreciate you. And it's cool that you're watching me from China. That's awesome. Need 2/3 of senators for a treaty. We'll get UN resolution. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I don't care what you call it. FPVs are a game changer in modern conflict, while ground drones seem to fall flat. Do you think they will ever have their time in the sun? I think ground drones have done okay. I just don't think that there's a massive industrial base to produce these things. So, I mean, yeah, you could say for sure that, I mean, FPVs fly. So, I mean, a bird is better at certain things than a squirrel is, for sure, especially covering ground. But I think ground drones definitely serve a purpose. Driving a large amount of explosives into a concealed area is super beneficial. So the only thing about the ground ones, so the difference between like FPVs and ground drones is that you can put up obstacles that actually inhibit the ground drones. So it's more circumstantial, the use of these things compared to, FPVs, which can just fly over everything. The only thing that's stopping them is netting. What's wrong with RT? Nothing's wrong with RT. I just don't use them as sources. I don't use RT or TAS. I don't like to use state run because it always is paid for and trying to get you to think something, right? I want my information to be presented to me in black and white, so that I can make my decision. I don't want op-ed pieces. I don't want any of that sort of stuff. RT isn't as bad, but some of the state television, like they're like they look wacky almost. Those are kind of goofy. Like the ones that are always showing like graphics of nuking Britain and stuff like that. Those channels. Scott has much better bald head. It's true. It's true. Thank you guys for being in here. I appreciate it. Question: do you still see the Russians using T-80s, or do you only see videos of T-72s and T-90s? Less T-80s. There was just less T-80s, I think, in totality. So lots of T-72s now, but just a lot less tanks in general. I think that tanks are just not as useful when you have $500 FPVs and you can, spend 6 of them on a single tank, and it's still a win, and you don't put anybody's life at risk. I mean, armor is important, but at this point, you need something that can just basically prevent the drone from hitting you. If you can't prevent the drone from hitting the tank, it doesn't matter what tank you're in. They all, take the L. Question: is it not the best solution for Xi or Putin's of the world just to make the best short-term deals possible, knowing long-term agreements are impossible to give? I mean, yes, if you're getting the most at the table at the moment of signing, yes. But usually deals are structured over months and years to accomplish tasks. So why are you spending your time listening to this stream if he's just a dope? That's true. It's a good question. Spending the time listening to this stream and offering me more engagement. It's very weird. You think you would want to not, do that and get me in front of more people, especially if you think I can influence like dumb people. That would be dangerous, right? After the fall of Andriivka, where will those troops go next? Well, Andriivka has already fallen, but in terms of where they will go next, we can go look at the map. Andriivka is right here. They will just continue down these roads towards Bakhtir and Oleksivka. So just these towns back behind. But guys, there's not a lot back here. The Ukrainians are very, very concerned about when Constantinople falls. There's just not a lot back here. This is actually one of the last fortifications back over here. Hey, Scott, appreciate your hard work and respect from Mumbai. Thank you, man. I appreciate you. Do you think the U.S. Navy can realistically defeat China's Navy in the Taiwan Strait, given that it's literally in China's backyard? No, I don't think that's the goal. I don't think the goal is ever to actually win utilizing Taiwan against China. I think if the issue is ever forced around Taiwan, it will be the exact same the exact same plan they had with Russia. It's sanctions. It's economic warfare. The U.S. is an economic powerhouse. That's where they want to use their ability, and it's much less risk involved than kinetic warfare. So I think that Taiwan will fall very quickly to the Chinese if they ever go for it, and I think that will kind of be the whole point. Try to do some damage to the Chinese in Taiwan, but then use that to isolate China later on. Live from Denver. Nice. Snow's coming down. Awesome. My brother's in Denver. Let's see. No girls allowed on here. True. Boys club. What is the estimated size of the Ukraine frontline armies and reserves? Ukraine's, I have no idea. They're looking rough though. The Russians is supposedly 1.2 million is like their current number, with around 700,000 in the SMO zone. I don't know. That was in like November or October though. So I at this point I'm not sure. We haven't got a new update. Scott, did you hear about Ukraine selling military equipment on the black market? Yeah. Again, I don't know. I haven't seen any proof of this. If I do see proof, it'll be interesting. So I wouldn't doubt it at all. All right, guys. That brings us to 50 minutes. I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for tuning into my live stream today. Thank you guys for asking questions and being here and being present and attentive. And yeah, I appreciate you all so much. I will probably do another live stream on Monday, I think. So tune into that live stream on Monday. Be safe, y'all. Take care. And just every time you read something right now, or every time you see an article or something like that, headline, take a second and just reevaluate what it could mean, and don't just take it at face value. And remember that everything you're reading right now is being presented to you for a very specific reason, right? It's not just news. It's a story. It's a narrative. It's a plan, a plot, something of that sort. So just step back and try to take it in as the much wider picture, and not the immediate what is happening right in front of me, and taking it just as that, because that's what dumb people do. All right, guys, take care and be safe. I'll talk to you on the next one. Goodbye.